The Sales Acceleration Formula by Mark Roberge. Picture this. It's late at night, and you've just made the biggest career decision of your life. You're joining a tiny 3-person startup with a crazy idea, and your brilliant co-founders have given you what sounds like an impossible mission. Your job? Build a sales team from scratch. Not just any sales team, but one that can take this little company from 0 to $100 million in revenue. Oh, and here's the kicker. You've never worked in sales a single day in your life. You've never managed a salesperson, never carried a quota. You're an engineer. You spend your days writing code, analyzing data, and building systems. The world of sales, with its legendary closers and high-pressure tactics, might as well be another planet. This was exactly where a young MIT graduate named Mark Roberge found himself when he joined a small company called HubSpot. Late one night, he sat down with a notepad and wrote 4 words that would define everything: scalable, predictable revenue growth. He knew the old playbook wouldn't work. He couldn't just hire a bunch of smooth talkers and cross his fingers. He had to approach it the only way he knew how. Like an engineer, he needed to find a formula, a system, a machine that could be built, measured, and optimized. What you're about to hear is the story of that discovery. It's the story of how Mark Roberge turned conventional sales wisdom on its head and proved that sales isn't an art form anymore. It's a science. By the end of today, you'll have the blueprint he created, a set of 4 interconnected formulas that transformed HubSpot into a global powerhouse. This isn't just about selling. It's about engineering success, and the principles you'll learn can be applied to almost any ambitious goal you set for yourself. So where do you even start when you need to build a sales machine from nothing? Mark knew that like any great building, it had to start with the foundation. And in sales, the foundation is the people you hire. This brings us to the first and most crucial discovery: the sales hiring formula. You've probably heard stories about legendary salespeople, the ones who could sell ice to penguins. They're often described as aggressive, convincing, maybe a little pushy. The natural assumption is that if you want a great sales team, you just need to find more people like that. So that's exactly what Mark tried at first. He went out and recruited the top performers from other companies, the absolute cream of the crop, the sales superstars. He wined and dined them, sold them on the HubSpot vision, and brought them on board. And what happened? Some of them crashed and burned. These were people who were crushing their numbers at their last job, yet they struggled at HubSpot. This was the first critical puzzle. Mark realized that a top performer at one company might be a bottom performer at another. Why? Because every company's sales context is different. Selling a simple, well-known product is completely different from selling a complex new idea that requires educating the customer. He understood that the perfect salesperson doesn't exist, but the perfect salesperson for your specific company does. The secret wasn't finding a universal mold. It was engineering a custom one. And while the ideal formula is different for every company, the process to engineer that formula is always the same. It's a 4-step loop. First, you establish a theory. You list out the characteristics you think will lead to success. Is it intelligence? Aggressiveness? Experience? Write them down. Second, you define an evaluation strategy. How will you actually test for these traits in an interview? Will you use role-playing? Ask specific behavioral questions. Third, you score every candidate against these characteristics using a consistent scorecard. This is crucial. No more gut feelings. You use data. And fourth, the most important step, you learn and iterate. After a few months, you look at your actual sales data. Who are your top performers? Who's struggling? You go back to their original interview scorecards and ask, which characteristics do my top performers have in common? And which characteristics don't seem to matter at all? This is where the engineering mindset completely changed the game. After about a year of hiring, Mark had enough data to run a formal regression analysis. He crunched the numbers, correlating every interview characteristic with post-hire sales success. The results were shocking. The characteristics that everyone traditionally associates with great salespeople, things like objection handling, convincing, and closing ability, had some of the worst correlations with success. In fact, closing ability had a negative correlation. The data showed that the pushy, aggressive salesperson was no longer effective. So what did work? The data pointed to a new kind of salesperson. The most successful people were intelligent, adaptable, and incredibly well prepared. This finding was statistical confirmation of a massive shift in the world. The internet had transferred power from the seller to the buyer. Buyers are now armed with information. They no longer tolerate being strong-armed. They respond to salespeople who are helpful consultants and trusted advisors. Through this rigorous process, Mark identified 5 traits that became the core of HubSpot's hiring formula. These traits are so powerful because they aren't about flashy sales tactics. They're about fundamental human qualities. The first, and most important, was coachability. This is the ability to absorb and apply feedback. Mark developed a brilliant way to test this. In the middle of an interview, he'd set up a role play. After the candidate finished, he'd ask them to critique their own performance. A great candidate would be reflective and self-aware. Then Mark would offer one piece of positive feedback and one area for improvement. He'd spend a few minutes coaching them on that specific skill. Then he'd say, "Okay, let's do it again." He wasn't looking for perfection on the second try. He was looking for effort. Did they try to apply the coaching? Did they absorb the feedback? He found that the rare candidates who absolutely crushed the second role play became the biggest rock stars on his team. Think about the power of that. If someone can show meaningful improvement after just 10 minutes of coaching, imagine what they can do in a week, a month, or a year. The second trait was curiosity. Great salespeople aren't great talkers. They're great questioners. They have a genuine desire to understand a customer's world. They ask thoughtful questions that make the customer think, no one's ever asked me that before. This builds trust and allows them to diagnose the real problem, just like a doctor. The third was prior success. This one's straightforward. Mark looked for a history of top performance in something. It didn't have to be sales. He hired an Olympic gold medalist and a cello player from a major symphony. These were people who had demonstrated the drive and discipline to rise to the top 10% of their field. That competitive fire is transferable. Fourth was intelligence, not just book smarts, but the ability to learn complex concepts quickly and explain them in simple, easy-to-understand ways. In a fast-changing industry, this was non-negotiable. And the fifth trait was work ethic. This is about proactively pursuing the mission with a high degree of energy. This data-driven hiring formula became HubSpot's first superpower. They were no longer gambling on hires. They were predictably building a team of top performers, custom fit for their unique sales environment. But hiring the right people is only half the battle. Once they walk in the door, how do you train them to succeed? This leads us to the second pillar, the sales training formula. The old-school approach to sales training is what Mark calls the ride-along. The new hire is told to shadow the number one salesperson, Sue, for a few weeks. The new hire watches Sue, listens to her calls, and tries to copy what she does. The problem? Every top performer has their own unique superpower. Sue might be a master at building personal relationships, but another top performer, Bob, might succeed through sheer activity volume, making more calls than anyone else. If you have Bob shadow Sue, he's going to walk away thinking he needs to be a relationship builder, which might not be his strength at all. He'll feel discouraged. This approach is not scalable or predictable. Mark's solution was to create a standardized training program built around a central best practices blueprint, or what he calls the sales methodology. He broke this down into 3 core elements. First, you must define the buyer journey. This is the most important part. Before you think about your sales process, you have to map out the steps a customer goes through when they buy your product. From their perspective, they start by becoming aware of a problem, then they research solutions, and finally they select a provider. Second, you design your sales process to align with and support that buyer journey. Each step your salesperson takes should be designed to help the customer move to the next stage of their journey. This transforms the salesperson from someone who's pushing a product to someone who's guiding a buyer. And third, you establish a qualifying matrix. This is a simple checklist of the information a salesperson needs to gather to understand if they can genuinely help a customer. The classic one is BANT: budget, authority, need, and timing. With this three-part methodology defined, you can build a training curriculum around it. You create specific modules for each stage of the sales process. You can even have your top performers teach the classes that align with their superpowers. Let your best rapport builder teach the Connect Call module, and your most analytical salesperson teach the Discovery Call module. To make the training predictable, Mark introduced exams and certifications. New hires had to pass a rigorous product knowledge exam and get certified on their ability to execute each stage of the sales process through role-playing. This wasn't about memorizing scripts. It was about ensuring they mastered the core competencies needed to succeed. This system allowed HubSpot to train every salesperson in the same world-class way, creating a consistent foundation for the entire team. Now you have the right people, and they're well-trained. But how do you manage them day to day to ensure they're constantly improving? This brings us to the sales management formula. Mark believes the title sales manager should be replaced with sales coach. He found that the single biggest driver of sales productivity is effective coaching, but most managers get it wrong. He uses a great analogy of two golf coaches. The bad coach watches you swing and then bombards you with 5 different things to fix at once. Change your grip. Shift your weight, adjust your backswing. Your head starts spinning, and you end up improving at nothing. The great coach, on the other hand, watches you swing and says, okay, let's just work on your grip. Take 100 swings with this new grip. They focus on improving just one skill at a time. This is the core of metrics-driven sales coaching. The best sales managers don't overwhelm their people with feedback. Instead, they use data to diagnose the one skill that, if improved, will have the biggest impact on that salesperson's performance. Then they customize a coaching plan around developing that single skill. For example, a manager might look at a salesperson's funnel and see that they're great at getting initial meetings but have a low conversion rate from demo to customer. Instead of just saying, close harder, a great manager peels back the onion. They dig into the data. Is the problem a lack of urgency? Are they failing to reach the real decision maker? Once the single bottleneck is identified, the manager and the salesperson co-create a plan to fix it, focusing all their energy there for the next month. This methodical, data-driven approach ensures that every coaching interaction is hyper-effective and leads to measurable improvement. Finally, you need to feed this well-oiled machine. You can have the best salespeople, training, and management in the world, but if they don't have anyone to talk to, it's all for nothing. This leads to the fourth and final pillar, the demand generation formula. For decades, the way companies found customers was through outbound marketing, cold calls, direct mail, trade shows. These are interruptive tactics. They're about pushing your message out to people who aren't asking for it. But as we discussed, the internet changed everything. Mark and the HubSpot founders recognized that buyers were now in control. They could research problems and find solutions on their own time, through Google and social media. So they flipped the formula. Instead of interrupting buyers, they focused on, quote, inbound marketing, a strategy designed to help buyers find them. The logic is simple. How do you get to the top of Google search results? You need to become an authority. And how do you do that? By creating a steady stream of high-quality, helpful content, blogs, ebooks, webinars, that answers the questions your potential customers are asking. And by participating in the online conversations where they already hang out. This doesn't happen overnight. It's like going to the gym. You don't see results after 1 week. But if you consistently create valuable content, you'll start to build a following. People will link to your website. Your social media authority will grow. And Google will reward you with higher rankings. Over time, this creates a predictable, scalable stream of inbound leads, people who are actively raising their hands and expressing interest in what you do. This influx of inbound leads requires a new level of alignment between sales and marketing, a relationship that's traditionally dysfunctional. Mark and his marketing counterpart, Mike Volpe, solved this by creating a service-level agreement, or SLA, between their teams. They used data to agree on exactly what constituted a, quote, qualified lead and how many of them marketing was responsible for delivering each month. They even calculated the implied revenue value of each type of lead, effectively putting marketing on a revenue quota just like sales. In return, sales committed to a specific process for following up on those leads, ensuring no opportunity was wasted. This SLA replaced the typical finger-pointing with a shared language of data and mutual accountability, turning the two departments into a single, seamless revenue engine. These four formulas, hiring, training, management, and demand generation, all working together, are what allowed HubSpot to achieve scalable, predictable revenue growth. Mark Roberge took a field that was considered an art and turned it into a science, creating a blueprint that any ambitious leader can follow to engineer their own success. When you step back and look at what Mark Roberge accomplished, the truly revolutionary idea isn't just a set of tactics for selling software. It's a fundamental shift in mindset. For generations, business literature has been filled with tales of charismatic visionaries and brilliant deal-makers. Success in sales was often portrayed as a kind of magic, an innate talent that you either had or you didn't. The sales acceleration formula completely flips this idea on its head. It makes the powerful argument that consistent success isn't born from charisma, it's built through process. It's the quiet, deliberate work of an engineer, not the dramatic flair of an artist. And in a world that's becoming more data-driven every single day, this idea is more relevant than ever. The book's most powerful lesson, I believe, is about control. So many businesses feel like they're at the mercy of the market, hoping for a good quarter, praying their top salesperson doesn't leave. Roberge's approach is a declaration that you don't have to hope, you can build. You can create a system so robust that success becomes a predictable output, not a fortunate accident. This is an incredibly empowering message, not just for a CEO or a sales leader, but for anyone trying to achieve a difficult goal. So how can you start applying this engineering mindset to your own life right now? Let me offer 3 simple starting points. First, rethink how you evaluate people. Whether you're hiring for a team or just choosing a project partner, stop looking for a generic superstar. Instead, take an hour and define the ideal characteristics for your specific context. What does success look like in your world? Write down the top 3 to 5 traits and then design one simple question or task to test for each. This small act of defining your criteria will bring immense clarity and save you from costly mistakes. Second, map your customer's journey. And by customer, I mean anyone you're trying to influence, a boss you're pitching an idea to, a college admissions officer, or an actual client. Before you think about what you want to say, map out the steps they go through. What are their initial questions? What are their biggest concerns? What information would be most helpful to them at each stage? When you build your process around their journey, you stop being a salesperson and start being a guide. And everyone trusts a guide. Finally, embrace the power of focusing on the one thing. Look at your own performance in any area of your life where you want to improve. In your next review of your work or your habits, resist the urge to create a long list of things to fix. Ask yourself the question that Mark taught his managers. What is the one skill that, if I improved it this month, would make the biggest difference? Identify it, create a simple plan to practice it, and focus all your energy there. You'll be amazed at the progress you can make when you stop trying to fix everything at once. Ultimately, the sales acceleration formula is more than a sales manual. It's a testament to the power of methodical, data-driven thinking in a world that often prizes gut instinct. It teaches us that the path to extraordinary results is often paved with ordinary, repeatable processes, executed with unwavering discipline. That was a summary of the Sales Acceleration Formula by Mark Roberge. We've touched on the big ideas today, but I'll be honest with you. A summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It shows you the layout, but it can't convey the feeling of actually walking the streets, meeting the people, and experiencing the culture. The real magic of this book is in the details, the specific examples, the nuanced insights, and the way the ideas build on one another. This summary is designed to help you decide if this journey is one you want to take. If the idea of turning chaos into predictability and art into science resonates with you, then I encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's about acquiring a new lens through which to see the world of business and achievement. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It's a small click for you, but it makes a huge difference in helping us bring more of these powerful ideas to people just like you. Let's keep learning and growing together.